Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Good morning and welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. I'm your host, Denise Griffitts, and this podcast is ranked in the top 2% of the most popular podcasts globally. And honestly, it's all because of my really incredible guests. I am honored and blessed to share time with people who are at the top of their game, and they show up here willing to help you get to where you want to be in life and in business. So today we are diving into the world of Julio Vincent Gambuto. He is an accomplished author and filmmaker whose work has reached millions. A Harvard graduate and USC-trained director, he is known for his feature film Team Marco and his viral essay series that captivated over 21 million readers worldwide. That's impressive. His latest book, Please Unsubscribe, Thanks, and it's got a longer title. I'll have him share that with you. Published by Simon & Schuster, draws inspiration from the transformative experiences of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Julio observed that the usual pressures of modern life faded. People began to rediscover what truly mattered to them. And he noted that many were exhausted. I remember this, exhausted and overwhelmed, caught in a cycle of constant busyness and consumerism. I'm not sure that we're really past that, but I think it's better. So through his writing, he aims to help others declutter their lives from unnecessary commitments and distractions, offering a blueprint to reclaim time, attention, and purpose in a world that often feels designed to overwhelm us. Boy, is that the truth. So join us as we explore Julio's insights on finding happiness and meaning in today's fast-paced society. Julio, good morning. Welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio, and thank you for sending me your book. It's in front of me as we speak. But before we get started, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you show up in the world?
Sure. Hi, Denise. It's really great to be with you and with your listeners. Good morning. Let me tell you about me. I'm originally from the boroughs of New York City. I'm from a big Italian family. I discovered I was gay at 19 and sort of went off and into the world and wanted to be a writer and an artist and spent many years trying to figure out what that means. and have sort of settled into a really nice rhythm now in my 40s of making work that I think is outspoken and full of heart. I hope it's full of heart. And at least it's intended to be. And I think, by 2019, I had kind of found myself running and going and sprinting and constantly on the treadmill, as so many people do. And the COVID pandemic was a massive wake-up call, not only for me, for many, many people. But it was something that inspired the book. And I certainly learned a lot from that period of pause and kind of wanted to communicate that to readers.
I lost my mute button. I was thumbing through the book and got distracted. Tell our audience about the book title.
Sure. So the book is called Please Unsubscribe, Thanks, How to Take Back Our Time, Attention, and Purpose in a Relentless World. The hardcover is actually called How to Take Back Our Time, Attention, and Purpose in a World Designed to Bury Us in Bullshit. But we decided to make the paperback subtitle a little more user-friendly and a little kinder. But the book is about how to step back from it all and how to really take a pause that's meaningful, what to do, what that means, how to
Excuse me, sorry.
That's okay. How to really create what I call a sacred space for yourself so that you can really think about not only how we interact with tech and the big brands and all of the big forces in our society, but also to kind of give a space to discover, what else there is to life that's not getting much attention or energy or focus or love, and to help people really reprioritize so that they're not only and always focused on what's appearing in front of them on their screen, but that they're really, living life in an intentional and conscious way.
I do. I'll be honest with you. And I love the title of the book. I like the hardback title better.
Thanks.
I do. I have the paperback, but I love the other title. But I'm a web developer by trade. I live in front of giant monitors. I'm constantly focused and thinking and plotting world domination. And if I allow myself to get distracted, oh, here comes an email, here comes a phone, it's hard to get back to what I was really, really concerning myself with. And if we as humans, I mean, we're easily distracted. Let's face it, it's not difficult to distract us. But you're right, it's done by design.
Well, that's, I think, what's really important. And because most of the time when people feel overwhelmed and they feel overcommitted and they feel like they're always on, they think it's a personal flaw, right? Somehow they can't keep up, or they don't have the skill set, or they don't have the wherewithal to kind of be in the world, in the modern world, in a powerful way. And what I want people to know is that it's not you and you're not alone. And, the world is designed this way by very large corporations. And, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with corporations, but they have been given so much free reign and so much power in our lives in the modern era. And when I say modern era, I mean kind of from 2000 on, and they occupy so much of our time and attention and take so much of our focus and our money. And I think it's just time now, 20 years on, to really reevaluate it all and to stop giving them so much power over our day to day and over our minute by minute lives. The original subtitle that you like, which uses the word bullshit, I use it on purpose because so much of it is nonsense. And the way that the system has been designed, it incentivizes nonsense, right? It gives more power to attention seekers, and attention seekers just seek more attention by being more and more outlandish and being more and more kind of just crazy. And, we're seeing it in the political space. We're seeing it in all of the social spaces, certainly all over social media. And that is a problem for a society that's trying to get up every day and just do the right thing and live a good life and be good to your neighbors. This sense of relentlessness and the overwhelm of it all is really, really, really in the way.
On Twitter this morning looking for something in particular. And I don't know if today is just mental health day or what, but it seemed like every lunatic and their grandmother is out there today. And I'm brutal. I block them. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. You need help, go get help, but you're not going to come sit in my living room with me.
Well, that's really important, right? Is to not only know that you can block them, but that
Oh,
that
yeah.
but that become a really active practice. And I think, when we all signed up for Facebook and we all got cell phones and cell phones became smartphones, and TV changed to subscriptions and the subscription model kind of took over capitalism, we've all kind of been sold on this very sexy story that being always on and allowing the erosion of our boundaries is a good thing. And it's great to be accessible all the time. And the truth is, you can't be accessible all the time, even if you have the best of intentions. Human beings need recovery and restoration. They need a moment to step back. So, blocking people, which is, very, very effective, especially when they're nuts, is is just a good solid practice. And now when I go on social media now twice a week, and that's kind of my rule for myself, and I schedule it in my calendar, and I kind of make it a task instead of an ongoing constant presence. But one of the things I do on social media now is every time I'm on, I unfollow about 3 to 5 people. It's not because I'm being cold. It's not because, they're terrible people. It's just because, life only has so many seats on the bus, and there's only so much I'm willing, as you say, to let into my living room, you know?
Exactly right. And Facebook, for some reason, decided about a month ago that I no longer existed. I've been there for a long, long time. You mentioned 2000. I think it was about then, and I've never been smacked around. I've never been in trouble. Oddly enough, my two business pages are there. My feline office assistants cat group is still there, but I don't exist. And the first week I was just miffed. I was hysterical. How do I get this back? The second week, I was like, huh, I kind of like this. I don't care if I ever get back to be and I've had friends saying, "Are you okay? Are you going to get back?" No, I don't think so. I've got other things to do.
Yeah.
So, but it was back in the day. Remember MySpace? And then we went to Facebook and
Oh,
then Twitter. And, I mean, we just kind of got, I don't know, caught in the tide, I guess. But now that I'm out of Facebook and probably permanently because I seriously don't care anymore, um, I've got more time. I found out that I wasn't just mindlessly, and I was just clicking over to Facebook and chatting with people and not making any money, not making any real forward progress, but having a good time. I'm an introvert. I'm very rarely around people. So that was kind of my people. It's like, oh, let's chat. Let's, exchange recipes. Turns out that's not the smartest thing I've ever done. So it was, they might have done me a favor. I don't know. But I'm like you. When I wasn't there on the birthdays, I was every day. Who
yeah.
is this person? Do I know this person? Do we have anything in common? And I would just, send them internal blessings and cut them loose.
And I think that there's these platforms still provide a certain social value if you want to reach people you don't know, people who I call in the book who are part of the super community, kind of this enormous circle of folks who you may not understand how to connect with geographically, but who exist in the world and have the same interests or hobbies or values. And I think that that's really important. I mean, one message I don't want to communicate is that somehow we all need to forever unplug and go live in a cabin somewhere alone. In fact, it's the opposite that I really advocate for, which is that, life is so beautiful and there are so many incredible people in the world. And, it's just my belief that that experience of humanity is sort of better um, if it unfolds in real time in front of you. But there's certain value of being online, and I think that the real problem has been that the tide, as you say, has changed. And in the beginning, we all got wrapped up in the tide because our friends from high school were there, and our friends we haven't seen forever, from way back when, or who we used to work with, were all online, and those things are wonderful, right? But then these companies sort of merged the marketplace with social media. And right about when Facebook sort of needed a business plan and had to figure out how to generate revenue, not only did advertising start to creep in, but suddenly all of these tools and platforms were market based. They were meant to make money, make profit, generate revenue, and that changed everything, because what we did is we took the market, which used to be something we went to, and we brought it and we combined it with this really strong social tool. And what that means is when we're scrolling, we're not only scrolling and seeing what our best friend from high school did yesterday, but we're also inundated with marketing messages and advertising messages all day long. And that's certainly a part of American life, but it has changed dramatically since the market was kind of put on our phones.
This is why you'll hear people say, "Oh, Facebook is listening to me. My phone is listening to me." It's all marketing. It's almost as if we have no privacy anymore. But you talk in the book, I've got sticky notes all over this thing. I'm on chapter 5, and it's the people problem. And you're talking in here a lot about relationships. And I'll be honest with you, I think this is just my personal observation that we create or accept relationships on social media that we wouldn't allow these people in our front doors.
Mhm.
And that's a problem.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand that, the internet allows us a certain way of communicating with people that is unnatural, meaning that this isn't what you would put up with in real life. There are customs and rituals about conversation and what's appropriate to speak about and what's an appropriate way to speak about things, that have been completely eroded when there are no kind of social consequences for the things that you say. So, in the end, I'm very non-traditional in my life. I'm very, I would say, sort of, out of the box, but I tend to get a little bit more conservative when it comes to how we speak to one another. And there are just things that would never be said in real life that are said online. And I think it's important when you look at it to kind of understand that, this is also a reflection of, how we feel about engaging in these conversations and what we're willing to kind of put up with, from other people and from social circles. And so it's really important to evaluate who you're letting into your life, whether it's online or in the real world, because people have real power over each other, and the messages that they spread and the narratives that they spread, are also really powerful.
I've often said that if anybody spoke to me in, let's say, the Walmart parking lot the way they would speak to me online, I'd be in jail. I'd need bail money. I would need bail money. I kid you not. I'm not going to tolerate it.
Yeah, and then that's important. And as you continue to get deeper into the book, I kind of talk about these three levels of subscription, and the book is meant to really unpack the concept of subscription and why it's so powerful. And I start with the outer ring, which is the surface subscriptions, which is everything we've been talking about, right? Not only our digital subscriptions to Facebook and to Instagram, but also those that we have to major corporations, things that are in our email, everything that comes at us digitally. And then I talk about a second ring of subscription, which is the social ring, right? Which is all the people in our lives. We are bound by kind of emotional contracts to them. And that's a subscription of a different kind, which is, we are committed to having certain people in our life, certain voices in our life, certain dynamics in our relationships, that have been kind of mimicked online as best as tech can do it. But then I also talk about a third ring, which is really the inner and underlying subscriptions. And what I mean by those is kind of the ideas and beliefs and notions that we have about who we are in the world. Those are commitments also. Those are things we signed up for, if you will. Those are also emotional contracts, to ourselves. And what I'm really interested in, and obviously, in the book, I spend a lot of time on it, is kind of what are these underlying subscriptions? Where do they come from? How do these stories get told and get built in our brains and in our hearts? And how can we change them if we want to? So when you talk about the Walmart parking lot, right, it's interesting to me because this so much of what we will allow into our lives, whether it's conversation or people or relationships or jobs or any of it, has so much to do with kind of how we see ourselves, who we think we are in the world, how we define happiness and success and money and forward thinking. And those are really deeply, deeply held beliefs that we have. And the way that, the reason I organize the book that way is that I think that's what marketing messages pry on, right? That's what advertising seeks to exploit, which is all these three rings, right? You can get a message on your computer that's just a regular digital message, but then that story or that narrative is sort of parroted and mimicked and told and spread through your social networks. And then it hits a really deep belief in you about who you are, right? So if I see, if I get up in the morning and I feel bad about my weight and I feel bad about how I look, And then I get on social media and I see that popular girl from high school who's still skinny and has a great husband and a great life on Instagram. I'm more likely to go click on the Weight Watchers ad that just suddenly appears, right? So marketing messages hit all of these three levels of subscription in a really designed and organized way so that you are more likely to engage in the marketplace based on how you feel about yourself and based on what the stories are that your friends are telling.
I have days where I'm convinced that marketing hates us. Really hates us. It's like, really? I can't get out of there quick enough. But then I'm bloody minded. So there is that. You know, I tend to be a little bit pig-headed. I fight with my nav system. She's not the boss of me. But a lot of people like exactly what you just described. It's like, oh, I was thinking about that the other day. The holidays are coming up. Nah, 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 nah. And off they go.
For sure. And you know, with the holidays and the pressure that we have all the time to spend, I mean, it's really important, you know, as we head into the fall and head into holiday season, that people just remember that, you know, you are not your credit card, you are not how much you spend on your children on Christmas. You are a source of love and talent and wisdom to the people around you, regardless of kind of, you know, how much you put on your Visa this month. And that's something that I think, at least in my opinion, has gotten kind of lost in our society.
Right now, we may be looking at a recession. We may be in one. Other, who knows? But money is tight. Groceries expensive. Gas is, you know, do I need to go to work today? Do I really need gas in that car? Things are getting very difficult right now. And I love what you just said about, you know, show up as you, bake a cake. I'm doing a lot of bread baking this Christmas for my neighbors. I hope they like bread and, you know, Roadhouse butter. That's what they're getting. So it just, but you know, when you can do things from love, from affection, from authenticity, that's a word that's overused, but it still needs to be addressed. Be authentic to yourself before you can be authentic with anybody else.
And that's really important. I mean, I think, you know, I had a friend in college who, you know, at the time I thought she and her family were crazy, but now I get it. But they used to have every other Christmas was homemade Christmas. And so, you know, one Christmas they would buy gifts like everybody else. And then on the alternate years, they would have to make something. So you would, you know, you would choose someone in the family, whether it was, you know, out of a hat or randomly, however it might be. And then you spent the fall making them something, or the week before, whatever it might be, making them something. And it was really personal. And now I think it's a really beautiful practice. At the time, I thought she was nuts, but you know, now I think it's just really an interesting way, as you're saying, to show up in an authentic way.
Right.
And you know, I think one of the things that's happened, especially as the market has kind of gotten more intense and closer to us, is we tend to believe that there's only one way to show up, and that's with spending. And that's, you know, a really something that everyone is reckoning with now. I mean, I see it in my own social circles, right? What does it mean when things get tighter and money gets more scarce and prices go up? And what does it mean that I can't spend the way that I spent before on my kids, on my family, on the people around me? And what does that mean in a deeper level about, you know, how I express myself and how much I care about them and how much I love them? And I don't think I'm the only one who kind of sees around
No,
us that, you know,
it's how you show up.
people
People
are
really
really
want to
struggling with
know. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. People really want to know who you are. Listen, if you're selling something, if you're, you know, writing a book, if you're selling services, if you're selling a widget, people are going to do business with those that they know, like, and trust and feel comfortable with. You can't just keep hammering people right now in particular. Buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. If you start panicking, people are smart. Our
Yeah.
spidey sense goes up and we're like, why? 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 What's wrong with you? What's going on?
I think that's so true. And there's a savviness to the population that has only grown and evolved over the last, 20 years as the marketing messages have gotten more intense and the market has come closer to us, people are not stupid. And, we keep having these conversations, especially in the political sphere, about what the electorate is willing to listen to and to accept as truth and fact and whatnot. And no matter who you support and what side of the aisle, you're on, I think we can all agree that, we're a savvy electorate, we're a savvy population, and we live in marketing messages all day long. It's not that hard to figure them out and to understand the real intentions behind them. So to that point, I always advocate people shop locally and be in their communities and find the thing they're looking for in a store instead of kind of getting it immediately delivered by drone, by Amazon, by Walmart, whatever it might be. But that's really increasingly more difficult because malls are getting, shopping malls are changing and local retail is changing. And, here in New York City, I mean, I can't tell you the number of storefronts that are up for rent. The economy is changing and only offering us certain options, which, so it's hard to not take them or use them.
That let's go back to COVID, during the pandemic, everything changed. It seemed like overnight, people were having to do business differently. Remote work became a big thing, which I've been remote for 20 years. Once I got my little degree and I marched out of them, they said, "Oh, Denise, don't go. We've got a job for you." I said, "No, I'm unemployable." And I am. I'm going to build my own business, but you have a nice day. And I only made them on my way out the door. You have a nice day now, here, and off I went. But remote work is so helpful for so many people. But you know what I noticed during the pandemic? That businesses who should have known better, but they were coasting. They were doing what they had always done. It was working. They didn't have any real issues. Things were, balance sheets were good. Everything was good. They forgot to tell people, their clients, their consumers, where they were, what they were doing, were they open, were they closed, how were they coping, how was this going to affect what they were working with them with. I was shocked by how many people just kind of sucked in air and went and quit working. They didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of a point of great anger and fury on my end. Watching corporations behave during the pandemic was, I thought, horrifying. I think there's
genuinely shocking. I was like,
shocking.
Look, I'm a web developer. I would try to visit, maybe I had done business with them, but I'd land on a website and I'd say, "Have you updated? Are you telling people where you are, what you're doing, how to reach you?" And I would take it upon myself to get kind of busy and send them a note and say, "Listen, I've never done business with you, or I have done business with you, but you're leaving a lot on the table. You need to get busy and tell people how you're doing and what's in it for them." And they're like, "Oh, they didn't know. How could they not know?"
Well, I think small businesses for sure were completely overwhelmed and had to, I hate this word, but pivot so quickly and so
I will not
fiercely.
use that word
I know,
anymore.
I
That's a
know,
COVID word.
I
I
know.
hate it.
But small businesses had to make such rapid and great changes so fast and so furiously. I personally don't blame them. It's the corporations that I was particularly, sort of angry with because I just saw a lack of humanity, a lack of connection with their consumers, a real sort of disdain, I think, for the relationship between, consumer and producer, because so many of these corporations, in the end, like just did so little for their workers and so little for the people who keep them alive and wealthy, frankly, all day long. Here in New York, I have a really good friend who works for a major soda retailer. We'll just leave it at that. And that retailer, who's a major brand, on their website had pictures of people in masks, and they had their safety statement, and they had their health and wellness statements, and you would have thought from their website that they were leading the way in protecting their consumers and their workers. And this friend went to work every single day for them and was never given a mask, was never never had a safety briefing, was never given any of the proper PPE to protect himself. And his wife was disturbed daily because he would come home from interacting with the public. And this is at the height of the pandemic, right? On behalf of this company. And so I think there was just a real disconnect between what the corporate message was and what the on the ground behavior was. And that's not the only example. I mean, there are so many corporations that didn't know what to do, didn't know how to do it properly, and are in such habits of disregarding their consumer bases and their workers that it just wasn't a priority. And just for me, it was kind of personally disgusting to watch.
A lot of the same things that you saw, and I was genuinely shocked. I mean, when you've got these giant companies that you would think that they've got HR, surely they could advise them, you know, but none of it made sense to me, to be honest. I'm still shocked by a lot of what took place during that time. What other observations during the pandemic inspired you to write, please? I can't even talk. Please unsubscribe. Thanks.
Well, I think it was an important moment to kind of discover how often we're willing to step off the treadmill and how often we're willing to step back and kind of evaluate where life is. At least for me, the experience was really profound in that I realized I hadn't been stepping back. I hadn't been really taking stock. And, just as an example, like one area of my life, my romantic life, my personal life, I hadn't been dating in about a decade, and I was in my 40s. And look, there are a lot of people who are single who are perfectly happy, and I applaud them. I was not one of them. And I wanted a relationship, and I very much was doing nothing about it because life was just go, 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 go. So that was an important, I think, turning point for me in the pandemic. And I think a lot of people started to reckon with either the relationship that they had or have or didn't have, because it illuminated a lot for people about kind of how much we were on autopilot and how much we were kind of just going about our day to day without really thinking about it. And so for me, that's been the biggest shift, I think, and I think for a lot of people, but it was definitely inspired, writing the book.
I would see, and I'm laughing about them now. I wasn't laughing then. They were kind of humorous, but young families all of a sudden realizing that they had to eat together. Really? I don't even like you. Why do I have to be at a table with you?
Totally true. Totally
I
true.
know.
Yeah. I mean, I have two sisters, and one of my sisters, her husband, actually, I talk about him in the book, but he had been commuting for an hour and 45 minutes each way every day for 18 years. And here in New
Sounds
York,
like California.
yeah, I mean, it's just a massive commute. I mean, living in the suburbs is not it's not, the suburbs are not that close in New York City. And it takes a long time to get in and out of the major work areas. And he just, it all came to a hard stop. And suddenly he could coach his son's, sports teams and be a part of the conversation about what the family was doing on the weekends and have dinner with his sons, my nephews. And it's not a perfect result. He might have to go back into the city, and I think now he's going in a few days a week. But major awakening, for him and for people like him who had just been doing what was expected of them because that was what was expected, and that's kind of just what you do, without kind of realizing, oh my gosh, it's been 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, whatever it might be, that I haven't sat at the table for more than, a night a week to have dinner with my family. And look, that's a judgment on my end, right? Maybe you don't want to have dinner with your family. You do you. But at the end of the day, people discovered, what was truly important to them and what mattered, and had the opportunity to make those changes. So the book, as I wrote it, the intention is to help people make those changes and to keep those changes, and to develop new habits and new ways of being, so that they can show up for the people that they love in a different way, and so that they can create a life that's really meaningful for them, kind of in this post-pandemic era.
Pandemic. I think we're still being clobbered. You mentioned habits. I had written that down a couple of times. We get in these habits, corporations do, we do as people, everybody gets in a habit. But then all of a sudden, you realize that you're not that far from the pandemic. You're still doing some of the same things you did before that may not be helpful to you. Are you finding that people are still trying to say, why am I still doing this? I don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's, people bounced back, and I think there's a number of theories about why people bounced back so hard and went right back to what they had been doing before. And the case I make in the book is that we went back to it because we were subscribed to it. And when I say that, I mean, we're committed to it. We have the same digital commitments on our screens. We have the same social commitments in our calendars. We have the same deep emotional contracts to ourselves about who we are in the world and what these things like success and money and power and advancement look like. And so I really challenge people in the book that if they want to make change and they really want this period after the pandemic to look and feel different, to kind of interrogate life at those three levels, right? Look at the digital subscriptions, look at everything that's coming out, coming to you on your screen, look at all the pinging and the ringing and the dinging, and then look at your social connections and networks, not only online on Facebook, but in real life. Who are you spending time with? What are the stories that you're telling to each other about the world and about things like money, success, power, happiness? And then look inside. And that is not an easy task, right? I was trapped alone in an apartment for 6 months, completely solo. And so I had the privilege to kind of take that time to look deeper inside. But that's a really difficult thing for people to do when they're always going, always running, always on that treadmill, especially if you have kids, especially if you've got a full life or hold a full-time job or go commute every day. The idea of stepping back and giving life some thought in those deeper ways is very, very daunting. So I wanted to create a guide, and I hope that the book is a conversation with people to help them to do some of that deeper thinking. And I hope that it's helpful.
It's a blueprint for reclaiming time, attention, and purpose. Can we dig into that a bit?
Sure. I mean, I think time and attention sort of goes along with so much of what we've been saying and talking about. And, let's stop giving away our focus and our money and our time and our eyeballs to everything that comes up in front of us. And the call in the book is really to choose and identify the things that really give you joy and really light you up and really have meaning for you, and focus more on them, double down on them, and get rid of everything else, so that you can really spend your time on the planet focused on the things that matter to you. Purpose, I found, a conversation that was difficult to have. And I had it in the book, and I continue to have it. And I think, we live in a society, especially in pop culture, that tells us that we're supposed to have this grand purpose, and we're supposed to somehow monetize it, and we're supposed to put it on the internet, and that's our purpose. And I could not disagree more. Especially even in the self-help world, even with the best of intentions, we tell each other that somehow each of us has this purpose. We've got to figure it out, and we've got to become that person. And that's all well and good. But I think it's so much simpler than that, right? I think it's about love, and it's about showing love to the people around us, and about being a part of their story, and having them be a part of ours, and knowing that there are just seasons in life, where it's about you, and there are seasons in life where it's not about you. And there are moments in the world and in our day and our weeks where we get to be the center of attention, and then there are other moments where we just get to be the helper, or we get to be the person who comes along to guide and to be a shoulder for somebody else. And when you live in a society that is this fast paced and is this focused on consumerism and is this focused on making sure that our gross domestic product is big every year and that the economy keeps growing, the message that we get is that somehow the rest of it is unimportant. And I couldn't disagree more. The rest of it is life, right? How we show up for each other, how we care about each other, how we love one another, what we're willing to do for our friends and neighbors, it is so much more meaningful than whether or not, the economy is humming along perfectly. And don't hear me wrong. I don't think that somehow the economy is not important. I just think we're particularly obsessed with it in this country in a way that kind of robs us of the realization and the opportunity to be good to one another more often and in a deeper way.
We just came out of a kind of hurricane. It was Hurricane Francine. We've never been real sure what happened. It made landfall about 60 miles away from me, but I live in a very small neighborhood deliberately. And I know the neighbors on either side of me, and that's pretty much it. I just, we all kind of wave at each other, but these are the only ones that I know to speak to, or they can text me. And the minute that, news, excuse me, started coming out about Francine was maybe heading towards our door, we had a little coffee clutch in the middle of the street. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
Very wet like this, all kinds of stuff bubbles out of the ground, so my voice suffers. But, one neighbor was out there boarding up her windows. The next neighbor was saying, Denise, if anything happens over there, come on over here. We're all just checking in with each other. Do you have everything? Do you have gas for your generator? Are your pets okay? We were out there 15, 20 minutes, and then off we went, took care of our hurricane prep, and checked in with each other periodically. I don't have to spend time with them or have actual coffee with them. We are good enough as people to check in with each other and then let it be. Show up when we need to.
And I think that's really important. This is who we are. We are a good people. And I think when
I agree with you.
especially this week as we commemorate 9/11, throughout the country, and especially here in New York City, I'm just always reminded of how unified we were when tragedy struck. And you see it time and time again. You see it in real life and you see it on the internet. But when things are bad in a community, when it's a weather event or a shooting or when things go wrong, we're very good at coming together and being supportive of one another as countrymen, as neighbors, as people going through this experience of being Americans. I just don't know that the market and the economy always gives us the credit for that, or that we give ourselves the opportunity to kind of be those people enough. And it doesn't mean you got to be best friends with everybody or best friends with your neighbors all the time or any of that. It just means that maybe our purpose and our experience of life would be deeper and richer if we started to kind of be more actively thoughtful about the people that we're spending our time with and are around.
Grateful. Gratitude, I think, gets kind of shoved off the table a lot. Maybe we're just not knowing or understanding that if we express gratitude, look, I'm a highly committed introvert. I fully intend to grow up to be the crazy cat lady sitting in a walker on her front porch, yelling, "Get off the grass!"
Go for it,
It's going to
Denise.
happen.
Go for
I'm
it.
going to. It's going to happen. Not anytime soon, but that's why not. But I'm an introvert,
Yeah.
and I am happy being an introvert. I'm not I'm not shy. I don't have any filters. I think you figured that out. I just need to be left alone in my own head.
Yeah.
But when it becomes necessary for me to get out in the street and help people pick up their trash cans that are literally floating down the road, I
Yeah.
do it. You do it. But what I'm noticing, and tell me what you're seeing, is that people are not expressing gratitude on a regular basis, whether it's to themselves, whether it's to their bottle of water. I love water. I drink a lot of water. I always tell my water, thank you. I'm not joking. We have to be grateful for what we have. And I hope people are paying attention to that.
I think it's so important. I have a really great friend who writes an excessive amount of thank you notes. And I just think it's wonderful. All right. And whenever you see her, or if you send something, or even if you've come over for dinner, she'll write a note to say thanks. It's so important that we kind of remind each other of how lucky we are and how much we have. And as Americans, how blessed we really, really are. If you travel anywhere and to all over the world, you'll know that we're living a very kind of unique and singular experience in the West. We don't really want for anything. We are comfortable. We are, the water runs and the gasoline's available, and healthcare, as much as we fight about it, is pretty great. So those are things to be grateful for. And I think that, when we sort of get in these modes of we have to take over the world, we have to be better, we have to be bigger, we have to be bolder all the time, there's a certain lack of gratitude there, right? That like that what we have is not good enough, and that we have to be bigger and better all the time. I question that. I question that in my own life, and I question it certainly in the book, and I question it in our society, right? Like, no, why do we have to be bigger and better constantly? Maybe what we have is wonderful. Maybe if we just spent more time actually enjoying it and living in it and being grateful for it, we would have a more fulfilling experience of our lives. I think it's really, really, really important. And that's not to say that everything is perfect in America, right? We've got some major problems, and I outlined so many of them in the book. But but we have the resources to solve them. We just have to kind of work together better to do that. But the underline here is, gratitude is really important, and I certainly have learned to practice it more in my life, and I have found it a powerful force.
Almost be taught to understand gratitude, which is embarrassing. But, when you're young and stupid, from birth to 40, you just, anybody in their 20s, so I'm so brilliant. No, you're not. Go sit down and let your brain finish developing.
Well, something happens in your 40s. It definitely changes.
It does. But the thing is, I always thought I was a fairly decent, grateful person, but it turns out I wasn't, because I wasn't internalizing how grateful I am for everything, even the crap that goes on in my life. I'm still grateful I'm here to experience it. But I had years ago, I've been doing this podcast for 16 years. It's old enough to drive now.
Mhm.
But years ago, this man came on my show, and the whole talk was about gratitude. And I thought, well, that's interesting. But he had been diagnosed with a very vicious form of cancer, and his doctors did the usual. You've got 6 months to live, get everything in order. And he thought about that a lot. And he said, I'm not going to let them order me around, kind of. And what he did was he did what he had to do. He had the surgery, but I think he, didn't know you're not going to poison me with radiation. There was some things that were recommended. He declined, but he did have the surgery. And he embarked on what he called an exercise in massive gratitude. And he essentially got himself healthy. He was grateful for everything. Like, say, my bottle of water. I'm not joking. When I jump in the shower, I keep thinking about people who don't have water. As wealthy as this globe is, why doesn't everybody have potable water? I don't understand it. That's a whole nother rant. But, and I was listening to him and I was shrinking. I really was, because I was so upset with myself for not understanding what he so clearly understood, that I was not being grateful. Look, I'm one of those people, I jump out of bed, or I did. I would get out of bed, hit the floor running, and my mother would say, "Oh crap, the devil says she's awake. Now what do we do?" Seriously. Now, when I wake up, I'm expressing gratitude out loud to my ceiling fan, to my spirit guides, whoever, my cat who's sitting on my bladder, who's about to get hurt. I'm expressing gratitude before my feet hit the floor. And you know what? It helps.
I couldn't agree more. It's so powerful and it's so important. And I have 6 nieces and nephews, and I often insist that they say please and thank you. And I sound like my grandfather and I sound like an old man. And but I just think it's the simplest of lessons and the simplest of things to learn as a human being functioning in a society where, being civil is really important. But to say please and thank you is really very powerful. And, the please part is, a sign of grace. And the thank you part is expressing that gratitude vocally out loud to each other. Thanks for being in my life. Thanks for being an important force in my life. Thanks for always supporting, me in my decision making, whether it was good or bad. Thanks for being there. That's an important part of, I think, not only how we ought to be going forward, but as Americans, is essential if we're gonna not only be grateful for what we have, but be able to, kind of share it with other people.
Honestly, as Americans, we should be sharing it with other people. And I don't mean giving away our treasury. I mean, help other people as best as we can, like my neighbors and I did. Now, I won't see them again until Christmas when I deliver their cookie bags. But that's okay. But it's,
Hey,
as
that's all right.
American, I know as Americans, we are blessed. The poorest among us typically has running water and cell phones. So I don't get all the complaining that goes on, but boy, we are running out of time. I want you to tell people where they can find your book. And is there anything in the book in particular that you would really like people to pick up and go to a specific chapter maybe and dig into it?
Sure. So the book is called Please Unsubscribe, Thanks, and it's available everywhere books are sold. It was the Barnes and Noble nonfiction pick of the month last month in August. So I'm very proud of the book, but I was thrilled to see it on tables throughout the country. If you don't go to barnesandnoble.com or your local indie bookshop, you can always go to my website, which is juliovincent.com, Julio, like Julio, Vincent.com. And you can buy it, or at least link to where to buy it there. One chapter, it's actually 2 chapters in the book, are specifically dedicated to work. And I'm really, really happy. But the book was given an Axiom Business Award for best book on work-life balance. And I spend 2 full chapters in the book talking about work and talking about work through the lens of those 3 subscription rings that I mentioned. What does it look like to make changes at work, about work, sort of at that surface level, digitally, at that social level, the people who we're working with, our colleagues, our clients, our industry, and then at a deeper level, the underlying ring. What does it mean to be successful? What does work even mean in a post-pandemic era? How do we not only, make a living for ourselves and our family, but what are our ideas and our beliefs about work and about power and about organizations, and about this place that we spend so much time in and on? So I hope you check out the book. I'm incredibly proud of it. It's my first book, and it's going very well. And I hope it's helpful for readers at every level.
Reviewed it on Amazon, Goodreads, and on my blog. It's a great book. And I firmly believe that it belongs in any entrepreneurial library. So grab it. Julio, thank you for sharing your inspiring journey and your insights with us today. Before I reluctantly let you go, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience? And where can people connect with you?
Sure. So connect with me primarily on my website, which is, again, juliovincent.com. And I'm on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not on Twitter or X anymore. I unsubscribed. But I am on Instagram and Facebook, and I check it twice a week and check in with the world, and then I check out and go about my business. But yeah, that's where I'm at. And starting next year, I'm going to be doing more speaking engagements and and traveling. I won't say touring, but traveling around, talking more about the book. I'll be speaking at South by Southwest in 2025, and all those dates and announcements will be on my social media. And if you have the chance to check any of them out, I'd love you to.
And to our audience, thank you for joining us today on Your Partner in Success Radio. And we explored the insights of Julio Vincent Gambuto, who was inspired to write Please Unsubscribe, Thanks. Seriously, go get that book during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this period allowed many to reflect on their lives and identify what truly matters. And he recognized that this honesty could lead to meaningful change, but he was concerned it might fade as society pushed to return to normal. Remember that phrase, new normal? That was another COVID pivot word. I hated those words. Sorry, that was a rant. Sorry. So, feeling overwhelmed by digital clutter and unfulfilling commitments, he sought to help others simplify their lives and understand that the decline of happiness in leisure time doesn't necessarily have to continue in America. So, if you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to leave us an Apple review. And why? Your feedback helps me continue to bring you insightful content and inspiring guests like Julio. So thank you, and I will see you next week. Julio, thank you so much. It has been a genuine pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.